Florida is against Georgia, Jacksonville. We will not call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Okay, we will just that one time, but we won't say it again. Okay, don't worry. Promise. ABC 3:30. Georgia is about a 16.5-point favorite. The total is just north of 50. The Bulldogs have won 3 straight and 6 of their past 7 against the Florida Gators. Georgia is looking to win 4 straight against the Gators for the first time since a 6-game win streak from 1978 through 1983. And hey, just so you know, the Gators, they've been playing better football, by the way, but now things are about to ramp up to a whole new level. Because if you look at what they have down the stretch as far as their schedule, it doesn't get much easier. All right, they have played Tennessee, but now you have a stretch that includes Texas, includes Georgia, you got Ole Miss. Things get tough here from this point forward for Billy Napier and the Gators, but they are an improved bunch. Let's go to question number 1. And how many times have we asked this question? Can Carson Beck get back on track this week? All right. Here's the good news. He's coming out of the bye week. Okay. And last year, heading into the bye week, Georgia had started to become a little bit more pass happy, a little bit too pass happy, if I'm going to be completely honest. Now, they were banged up at running back last year. That was a huge problem. Remember, they had guys that were in and out of the lineup. At one point, they had to move a receiver to running back. They didn't have enough bodies to run the ball as much as they probably would have liked, which led to Carson Beck attempting 30-plus passes in every game prior to the bye week. He averaged 33.3 attempts per game in those 7 games. Well, after the bye week, they got a little healthier, and they reevaluated what they wanted their offense to be. He, as a result, averaged 26 passing attempts down the stretch. So 33.5 in the first 7 games, 26 attempts a game in the last 7. They took some of the pressure off of him. They became a little more committed to the run game. Another thing that was a big difference before and after the bye week is that last year, in the first 7 games, he threw 4 picks. But in the 3 games leading up to the bye, those last 3 games, he threw 1 interception in each of those 3 games heading into the off week. The final 7, he was lights out from a decision-making standpoint, just 2 picks after the bye week in 2023. So far, it's been a different guy. He's thrown 8 picks this year. But if we're going to look a little beyond it, he's thrown 5 in the last 2 weeks, and all 8 have come in the last 4 games. The only game in which he did not throw an interception was against Auburn. So maybe that bye week came at the perfect time. And if you look at where it was last year, how he played before and then how he played after, you saw a very different guy. And he's going against a secondary that is going to allow you to kind of get back on track. If you look at Florida, their biggest question mark perhaps might be the secondary. Now, outside of a lights-out performance against Samford, not Stanford, Samford, the group has struggled. We saw them get torched by Miami, and that is by far the best passing attack that the Gators have seen this year. This will be the second best. So we will see where things can go from there. Question number 2. Can Florida stay committed to the rushing attack? Because this is going to be a very interesting approach for Florida. It's pretty obvious based on how things went against Kentucky. This is a big play offense. They want to create big plays. They want to push the ball down the field. They want to manufacture play action and misdirection and allow time for those guys to take off, get behind the defense, and lag way to drop it in the basket. But the only way you're really going to get favorable looks to take shots downfield is if you stay committed to the run game. And I do think, too, while they want to create big plays, I also think shrinking the game is going to be beneficial for Florida. They're going to need to muddy it up a little bit. They're going to have some time-consuming, time of possession, clock-managing drives. And if they can do that, they can shrink the game and not allow the talent gap, not allow the experience gap, not allow the depth gap to come to the forefront as easily. So can Florida stay committed to the run game without trying to get too aggressive offensively? Question 3, can Georgia find some balance offensively? Because if you look at Carson Beck's struggles, I think part of it is because they're probably a little bit too pass happy. Another part of it is they haven't been able to effectively run the football the way we thought they'd be able to coming into the season. Now, part of that is because the offensive line has been dealing with some injuries. They've been without 2 starters. They also have a couple other guys that have stayed in the lineup but have been super banged up. And the run game just hasn't taken off the way we thought it might. And now, guess who's playing running back for Georgia? That would be a young man by the name of ETN. He is formerly of the Florida Gators. So can they get ETN going in a game against his former team? That will be interesting as well. And when he gets going, that's going to open things up a lot for Carson Beck off play action. Because I know there's probably a little distrust with the offensive line. I think that's something that you got to probably monitor moving forward. I'm not sure Carson's always comfortable when he's dropping back. But one thing that has been consistent this year is how effective Carson Beck has been off play action. He has a QBR of 85.7 off play action. Remember, that's a scale from 1 to 100. So when you're up, mid to high 80s, that's pretty sporty. So QBR is 85.7 off play action. But when he's in standard drop back and there is no run fake involved, that QBR drops by nearly 30 points, down to 59.1. So something worth watching. If they can get the run game going, the play action game will get going, and then maybe as a result, Carson Beck can get going. I referenced it already. It's question number 4. Can Florida hit some big explosive plays? Now, Florida has had 7 plays from scrimmage that have gone for 50-plus yards. That's 7th in the SEC. They have 3 plays of 60-plus yards. That's 4th. They have 3 plays of 70-plus yards. That's 1st. And they have 1 play that went for 80-plus yards. This is a big play offense. That's what they've now become with DJ Lagway under center. And against Kentucky, Lagway had one of the more remarkable box scores I think I've ever seen. He completed just 7 passes. But those 7 passes, all 7, went for at least 20 yards. 5 went for at least 40 yards. And those 7 passes led to 259 yards through the air. Okay. That's pretty good as far as yards per completion is concerned. When you're somewhere in the middle, 35 yards per completion, I'd say that's pretty good. These receivers have been pretty good as well. You have the transfer Elijah Badger from Arizona State. You have the Wisconsin transfer Chimere Dike, who's been really solid as well. And they've been without their top guy, Eugene Wilson, who did miss some time with injury. He did come back against Tennessee, but had just 1 catch. It did go for 40 yards, though. So this is an explosive offense that can create plays downfield. The problem with having your identity rooted in explosive plays is you better be able to block them. And Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker, that tandem, as they proved against the Texas Longhorns, those guys can take over the game. They can absolutely take over the game. So you better be able to block them to allow those receivers to uncover downfield, because if you can't block them, the play's dead before it starts. The one thing I do think you can do, though, I do think you can take advantage of the secondary. Like I said, you got to be able to block them, but this secondary is not always as good as it was in years past. They lost 3 incredible players off last year's team. Kamari Lassiter, Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard. Those 3 are all starting in the NFL. None were first-round picks, but they were great football players. They still have Malachi Starks, but the others have been a little up and down at times this year. Janelle Aguero, Dan Jackson, they're going to miss a little time in this game because of targeting calls. And while Texas, they were not going to be the type of team that could challenge them. When you look at Texas and their offense, a vast majority of their offense comes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. But those that have challenged Georgia downfield have found some success. They've allowed 7 completions on balls thrown 30 yards downfield. That's tied for the most in the SEC. A couple trends in the game. Florida has covered 4 straight after starting the season 0-3 against the spread. That's the longest active cover streak in the SEC. And Georgia's 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games as favorite. That is tied for the largest active against the spread losing streak among Power 4 teams behind TCU. I'm taking Georgia, but 16.5 is too many. I'm thinking like a 31-17 type of game. I think Florida will hit a couple big plays, and I think they'll be able to control the clock a little bit. But Carson Beck and company, they're going to feast on a secondary that has been challenged at times this year.